Debate live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe. Hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live. There's also a coffee, Patreon, crypto and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and X. Now we are joined by Neil, Jardo, Click OK, and a whole bunch of people in the Flat Earth Debate Discord server, so welcome one and all.
How are you?
I'm alright. My side is really hurting me. Other than that, I'm alright.
We got to get busy with the book. I hope this week we can get flowing with that, because this book needs to hit the world.
All in good time, Neil. All in good time. There's no rush. I mean, I've got 38 microphones still left to sell, so I'm okay. I've still got a little bit of income trickling in from that, which has definitely helped.
We don't have time. When you speak to someone that you haven't spoken to in 3 years and they start telling you about ice walls, that means we got to get the right narrative out there. We don't have time. We got to get going. We haven't done the book in months. I know circumstances happened, but we got to get serious now.
Yeah, all in good time. As I say, seeing this on the horizon, no pun intended, was the reason I started flogging microphones, and that was back in February, like February, March time. So it's been months and months and months and months of buying and selling microphones just to keep the wolves at bay. And it has. And I'm quite pleased with that fact. You know, it's slowed right down now because I'm down to the garbage stuff that's really difficult to sell, that's been lurking around for months on end in my eBay. But, you know, a couple of things sell every so often, and that's just about enough to keep me going. That and e-begging a little bit more furiously. But I still haven't had to do a GoFundMe campaign, have I? I've not had to stick the cap out and go, right, I'm actually screwed. Without this GoFundMe campaign, I can't keep the lights on. I've not had to do that. And there has been times in the past when I've had to do that. Like when I've not been able to pay for the electrical work that this apartment needed. I had to do a GoFundMe, otherwise I literally wouldn't have been able to keep the lights on. So that hasn't happened yet. So I'm very pleased with that. I don't like having to e-beg. It's by e-beg I mean actually do a proper campaign, as opposed to say, I'm really poor, please help me. People generally do. Just send me in a couple of extra PayPals and that's enough to keep the wolves at bay on top of my microphones. So it'd be nice to not have to do that. It'd be nice to not ever have to say, I'm really struggling, can you help me out? And people from the opposing side sort of point out the contradiction, which is in their mind prevalent when I say, okay, I'm struggling and heavily censored, so I need financial help. And then later in the show, I'll be ripping a fundy and you know what. And they'll be like, but you're so vicious and nasty to the people who come in and talk to you. Like what, the people who will literally ignore every single word that we put to them in contradiction of what they've just put to us, and then ask us if we're finished when you've asked them a direct question they've ignored 7 times. That's the kind of person that we get irritated with. And in their mind, because I'm poor, I should just let these arseholes behave like arseholes. You're like, no. It doesn't change how I'm going to behave with people who come in and tell us that we've got a bent, curved sea level. And then when we point out a contradiction in terms to them, they just ignore us. And you repeat it over and over and over again, met with silence. And then when you're in the middle of pointing it out for the 8th time, they'll start interrupting the middle of it, asking you if you're finished. Like I say, that's never going to change how I react to that type of person. A wanker, that is. I'll just treat them like wankers, because they are wankers. That's all our opponents have got now, just to behave like a wanker in the face of having their contradictions pointed out to them when we tell them Earth's measured flat, which it absolutely is.
Yeah, I don't understand why QE is not seeing it. Censorship. Because Brian said the other day there was a time when there'd be over 300 people in here. Now we can only imagine where it would be if they never put their hands to our throat and held us back. But it is heavily censored. I mean, come on. How long you been doing this, Nathan? Over 10 years?
Yeah. But then you've got to ask yourself, what would I rather have? If I look at the other side of the discussion, I go, okay, there's a couple of exceptions to this that just don't care and just rake in the money. But for the most part, anybody with a conscience on the other side of the discussion has to wrap their head around how incorrect they are and find workarounds for utilisation of a flat Earth when measuring the surface. Now, that is the reality of their position that they find themselves in. Now, you are going to lose sleep over that. I've said this many times. I don't. Now, that is the cross we have to burn when it comes to being financially more hard up than our opponents. He'll get hundreds of thousands of views, lots of ad revenue, and probably plenty of support from people who are equally wanting their bias confirmed. Now here, when people support me financially, they're not supporting me financially and going, thank you for overcoming this awkward, difficult flat Earth problem that I've got with this conversion with Havasine, or this conversion to the centre of Earth, or great circle routes, or whatever little get around that they need to employ when they're faced with the fact Earth's measured flat. Nobody's thanking me for that. They just thank me for just being here, just doing what I do in general. That's what I get thanked for when people give me financial support. Then there's nothing specific that they're going through. Now, they'll occasionally, same people, repeat what we talk about here in response to commenters on my videos. That is to say, they'll say things like, well, Earth's measured flat. Here's an example. Because they've got that from us doing what we do daily. But they're only frustrated with the person who comes and flies in the face, again, no pun intended, of elevation with respect to surface level when flying, or elevation angle measurements when surveying. Things like that are just as is for both sides. And our side just has to point it out. Their side has to lose sleep and figure out a way around that awkward fact that Earth's measured flat. So you have to ask yourself, which side would you rather be on? The side that loses sleep, unless you're a complete psychopath, or the side that knows what's what? Well, we're the side that knows what's what because both sides have to measure Earth flat. We just don't have to apologise for it, and they do.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, because if you look at the comments, and let's just say like Simon Dan's videos, they're all thanking him for overcoming it, even though it was not overcome. But they're coping, and they're trying to cope.
Yeah,
That's
thank
what
you,
they
Dan.
need him for.
Thank you, Dan, for measuring Earth flat 1,000 times with elevation angle measurements off the surface level to the sun to derive a radial value after the fact that violates a flat Earth measurement. Really appreciate it. Thanks for all your work. Okay, then I come along and go, Dan's just measured Earth flat though, hasn't he? Thousands of times. I don't need to apologise for anything. I don't need to overcome anything. I just point out how he's measured Earth. And that's the end of my discussion in the matter. It's pointing out what's been measured. Earth as a flat surface level for an angle. It's called an elevation angle. Elevation being off the surface, angle being two straight lines, the sun being the thing being measured by Dan and his participants. So Dan is going to look at that and go, well, how do I overcome that? Well, the way he's overcome that is say, well, it's okay to measure Earth flat on the small scale. But that's because it's a really big ball. Like, that's got to sting. Now, if you hear that, you might, as an audience member of Dan, go, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. We can measure Earth flat because it's a really big ball. But you know that's going to cause a cognitive itch at best. At worst, you're going to lose sleep over it, or it's going to drive you nuts. Plenty of them seem to display that. And then they project that onto us, which is the only frustrating part as a flatty. Their insecurities, difficulty with flat Earth measurements get projected onto us. Their pain becomes our pain if we allow it to. Yeah, 50 people watching. Hold on a second. Please share the show. Good to have 50 people watching so early on, 10 minutes in. Brilliant. Smash that share button if you haven't done so already. 2 clicks and you can share it on your favourite social media platform, be that Bebo or MySpace, X, Facebook, whatever it is you're using. Please share the show.
You gonna do a little housekeeping today?
And if you want, any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge, formerly known as Earth curve?
Wait. You mean the horizon was once thought of to be Earth curve? How so?
There's a mathematics called Earth curve mathematics that requires we measure Earth flat from surface level. And axiomatically, it must be a flat surface level because it's going to be utilising a parallel eye level to derive a dip angle measurement to a point that's below the surface level based on an extrapolation that's in reality just a perspective calculation in an orthographic view that suggests there's a point below surface level marked with an X, labelled horizon, called Earth curve, alleged to be the reason that things disappear in the distance, even though stuff shrinks as it gets further away from it. Nevertheless, this inference of a below surface level that you've just measured point called the horizon is the alleged geometric physical sphere edge. We debunked it in 2020 with the Black Swan. If the Earth was a sphere with a radius of 3959 miles, that is to say, if we beg the question of their belief, then every distance to that marked with an X geometric horizon can be no more than 1.22 times the square root of the observer's height off a flat Earth measurement in feet with a parallel eye level. Distance to horizon in the Black Swan is beyond the geometric limitations at 1.22 times the square root of the observer's height in feet. Therefore, the Earth is not a sphere and the horizon is not Earth curve. In 2025, we point out that in order to infer that the Earth curve edge horizon below surface level exists at all in an orthographic mathematics, and only in an orthographic mathematics, you must first measure Earth flat at sea level.
Should be game over right there, no?
It is game over. You measure Earth flat for Earth curve mathematics. Shout out to Divergent Droid and Cordial Cynic, Matrix Media, good to see you. Pablo, nice to have you. Christian, thanks for being here. Uncle Ben, thanks for joining the live stream. Nice to have you all. Click, 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 thanks for joining also. Awesomeo, first commenter, good to have you in the live chat. Anybody I've missed? Axiom Addict, again, nice to see you. Zozo, he's commented on some of my microphone videos. Nice to have you. Anybody else? Dank, nice to see you as well. Jim, is it Anis? Jim Anis, thanks for being in my live stream chat. Please share the show. Personal pair programmer, thanks for being here.
Well, I got a guy saying celestial navigation does not work with personal sky the way we do. Why? Because converting curved personal sky to flat does not work without distortions. Invoking apparent height distorts shapes. Do we ever invoke an apparent height?
I've no idea what he's talking about. Height is a measurement off surface level, isn't it? Elevation angles are an angle that requires the surface be flat. It's on screen. It's labelled elevation angle. An elevation angle is you measuring Earth's surface flat. It can only be flat because what you're trying to achieve is this point. Or if you're measuring a radial value for a circle of equal altitude calculation, it's this distance to become circular. Yeah? That's what you're actually measuring, this angle. Now, for it to be an angle, an elevation angle, it has to be off the surface. What do you think elevation means? It's off the surface. It's a straight line for it to be an angle, and it's off the surface for it to be an elevation angle. It's what we use for navigation. It's what we use for measuring heights and rise over run in surveying. Trigonometry. That's how Earth gets measured. Now, when they say, wow, you can't have it, I don't care what you say we can't have. That is how Earth gets measured, regardless of whether or not an opponent comes along and tells us, nah, you can't do it that way. Yeah, it is done that way. Don't have to like it.
Yeah, but how is he saying that? See, but we're not, and invoking an apparent GP says goodbye, celestial navigation. We're not invoking an apparent GP.
What ground position? This point here.
Yeah.
That's how it's done. Again, not my issue. People telling me, you haven't figured out how big the Earth is across using flat plane geometry. No, I haven't, have I? And I'm a YouTuber. you think it's my responsibility to tell you the size of the flat plane that we measure flat without exception? No. But you thought it was a ball. Now you're asking me if I know the size based on flat Earth prerequisite measurements of the surface level. So those people need to understand that they're asking me after a concession that they now appreciate how flat Earth is, whether or not I know how big it is. No, I don't. And I don't care. What I do know is that to create your ball, you measure areas of equal elevation with Polaris at its minimum to derive a radial value for your ball after measuring Earth flat. So all measurements of Earth are flat, including but not limited to the extrapolated ball calculations derived from flat Earth measurements. So we're all clear, Earth just gets measured flat for everyone always and without exception. So who cares what I know or map beyond that? I'm a YouTuber. Who talks about the measurements of Earth being flat, which they are in all instances without exception.
Yeah, once you say height, it's over. You're using our stuff. I appreciate you not using our stuff.
Yeah, you don't get to use height unless you're measuring Earth flat. Elevation is off surface level. As we were talking about in the pre-show, though, the whole flat Earth notion has come about by taking what is obvious and observable about Earth and its measurements in all respects for everyone. That's a flat Earth prerequisite that we use when measuring Earth. Mapping Earth, surveying Earth, building on Earth, flying over Earth, sailing on Earth. All of them are flat. Now that's just a simple fact of life. But if you want people to believe you're on a ball, then you need to turn that simple fact that's utilised for ball inference into a conspiracy and belief that people hold based on there being ice walls. Can you turn your camera off? You right distracted me, Neil. You need to turn that into a group of people first and foremost. So instead of flat Earth being about measurements of elevation angles, of surface level, or dip angles, or any of the stuff that we talk about here, you need to turn it into a group of people who believe in ice walls and believe in domes and things like that, rather than it being about how Earth gets measured for everyone. But that's the trick. Get numpties, and you were talking, no offence to your family, but that's how I'm going to describe it, whether you like it or not. When numpties come along and start asking you about whether or not 2 points in the sky are relevant. What about them, is the question. Well, in my belief, says man who thinks 2 points in the sky proves a presuppositional ball that's been measured flat to convert into sphericity to then infer that a celestial sphere, derived from Polaris measurements and minimums, that would be flat Earth prerequisites, in somehow inference makes it true when you point at 2 points north and south in the sky. Like, north and south are flat Earth only directions. Having a point in the sky that you're going to measure in both instances off a flat plane for anything navigational or surveying doesn't change how Earth gets measured flat. But for them, because you've measured Earth flat, created a ball in mathematics, and then that ball can utilise 2 points antipodal from one another by assumption, that means that the very fact that we've got 2 points in the sky means that we do have the presupposition of an antipodal assumption. No, it doesn't. It just means we've got 2 points in the sky that are inferred through navigational techniques that measure Earth flat and are then converted into a ball. But the conversion isn't the prerequisite. The flat Earth measurement is. The elevation angles are. All stars used for navigation in both north and south are utilisable only through flat Earth elevation angle measurement. It doesn't matter where you are, north or south, which are flat Earth directions. Point north. Tell me, we've got 2 points of rotation in the north and south. That's fascinating. Point north for me. You're pointing towards the horizon there, sir. That's horizontal that you're pointing. Like on a compass. So, your point being? Oh, right, after you've taken your flat Earth prerequisite elevation angle measurements and converted them into a spherical ball model based on Polaris minimums, you're telling me that that means that your presupposition of a ball that's converted through flat Earth measurements is proven by pointing north and saying that that's where there's a star rotation, or pointing south and saying that's where the... No, that doesn't prove you're on a ball. It means you've begged the question of being on a ball and are utilising something that's part of the conversion process. But the conversion process ignores how flat you had to measure it in the first instance to create that system. I will lean into the fact you also require Earth be measured flat in every single example to create this presuppositional ball that's antipode in the north and south, as opposed to a flat Earth only direction called north and south. North and south are flat.
Yeah, but then why is it doing that? Tell me why that happens. If you can't give me an explanation, then the spherical Earth does.
Don't know. So spherical Earth does not give an explanation for antipodal star positioning. It's a presupposition that's been derived from the flat Earth measurement. So it's not explaining how north, a flat Earth direction, has got stars above that rotate, and south has got a prerequisite elevation angle to every navigatable star in that area. Now, the argument has currently been about whether or not we've got Sigma Octantis as a point. There's an empty area that the stars rotate about. Now, if you want to infer that there's a star there, okay, let's just say I accept that. And still...
It works on a sphere.
No, it does not. Works on the prerequisite that you've measured Earth flat with elevation angles and converted it to a hemispherical system, one at a time, not both, and then sandwich them antipodal in a system called the celestial sphere. The only way that functions is in a ball, with you on a plane, north or south. But the fact that you can sandwich both systems antipodal from one another does not mean that you're on a ball, because it doesn't work on the surface of anything spherical. It only works if you've derived that system from flat Earth prerequisite measurements inside a ball at one point for one hemisphere at a time. So no, it doesn't work on a ball. It doesn't even work in a ball, because even in a ball, you're still going to extend the plane for your area. That's called the celestial plane, beyond the equatorial plane that the ball infers for the antipodal positioning. So no, you still require Earth to be measured flat to derive that system. And it won't work on the surface. It will only work inside.
Yeah, my son will say, look, there's 2 points in the sky that can only happen on a sphere. It will not work on a flat Earth. Argument over.
No, it's not argument over. If he says 2 points in the sky, north and south are flat. North and south only work flat. That ends that discussion.
Yes, sir.
Get Nathan to sort his audio. What's wrong with my audio, Adam? Adam's saying something wrong with my audio. Does everyone hear me clearly enough?
Sounds good to me.
Could be your end, Adam. Hopefully he'll join and tell me if there's something wrong. Got a pain in my side, so I've turned up my line on my desk because I don't want to have to shout, because it hurts my side. So maybe that's what he's talking about. Who knows? I'm sure he'll let me know.
You're a little bit tinny today, yeah.
Like I say, I'm quite a way away from my mic, and I've just turned myself up rather than yelling.
I just went on YouTube, and it sounds fine to me.
Can you talk amongst yourselves for a second so I can just double check it, because I can't do both at the same time.
Yeah, so that's had a conversation went with my son last night. So that's his stance, and no matter what I tell him, he's not budging. But he understands the measurements. But in his mind, because there's opposite star rotations of 2 points in the sky, as he says it can't work on a flat Earth. It can only work on a sphere. So
Sounds great. I just checked. It sounds great, Adam. Maybe a smidge more gain needed, but...
He's getting old. His ears are probably not working so well.
Getting insulted, Adam. Yeah, you criticise my audio. Unless it's because I've got it heavily gated. I've got the fan on. I'm really hot, so maybe that's what it is. I've got a heavy gate. Maybe it's cutting off the starts of my sentences. Who knows? I'm sure he'll let me know. But has anything happened over the weekend that was interesting?
The English beat the Americans in the Ryder Cup.
Not what I mean. So one of the comments, I think it might have been Divergent Droid, was saying that he recognised the voice of the guy we covered on Friday from certain Discord servers where he's lurking. And the inference was that he's cherry-picking his guests so that he's got the most idiotic and easy, low-hanging fruit to deal with on his live streams. I'm like, yeah, I can believe
Really?
that.
You talking about the mathematical guy?
Yeah, yeah.
Dr. Blitz? Yeah,
Yes.
well, I knew it.
Click, click, click says, adage of the day, quote, you can lead a horse to flat water, ... Very good.
Well, I was trying and I couldn't get in, so I'm sure he's picking the right people to make them look stupid. You know, pick a flat earth that says, "Oh, yeah, I know Earth is flat because gravity ain't real," huh?
Yeah.
But that's pretty sad because who are you lying to? You're only lying to yourself. If you want to, like, he knows about this show. Julian, I sent him an invitation.
Yeah. Well, I'm not in any rush to have anybody on. I don't care. We'll still be running a live show regardless.
No, but I said this in the past. If it's turned around, they came out with a rock solid tool. Let's just say, hypothetically, that it is definitely a globe we're on. You think promote the position I was promoting before? So I don't get it. Like, we know it's measured flat. Well, you're still promoting a ball. Is it pride? I understand the Danny Faulkners of the world, their whole life is on that, right? That's how they earn their living. They went to schooling for that, right? So I understand, but I don't agree.
Sure, you just have to point out where things like radial values and circumference values for their ball come from. You know, you measure Earth flat with minimum elevation angles to Polaris to derive a radial value to give you a circumference of a ball. But that's a flat Earth measurement, or Al-Biruni's derivation of flat Earth measurement, or in more modern times, Simon-Dan's elevation angle measurements to the Sun. Thousands of measurements of Earth flat in order to derive sphericity from those flat Earth prerequisite elevation angle measurements. But people will skip past the flat Earth measuring bit and start dictating to you how their ball functions mathematically. Like, yeah, but where was it measured? Like I say, it's very painful to actually acknowledge how Earth gets measured flat to create a ball. It's easier to just say, well, Earth is a ball, here's how it's a ball, without acknowledging the measurements that got you there. Because they're flat. It's just that simple.
Yeah, like this guy, Coriolis. He's constantly in a chat every day. Right? Produces 0.7 milliarc second with the orbit of Earth. Like we've dealt with him before. Why do you still come here and spew the same nonsense?
Arc seconds. Arc seconds are angle measurements off a flat surface.
That's what I'm saying.
Right, so he's using a flat Earth prerequisite to make demands of you. You're measuring Earth flat with an arc second. What are you talking about? Hey, One Deck.
Hi, Nathan. Hi, guys. You all right?
That's the trick, isn't it? Asking you how this on screen works on a flat Earth. So what you see on screen seems very ball-like, doesn't it? Here we are looking at Earth in a very complicated manner with a ball wrapped around a ball. Man, this is all how it must function, right? We've got to have a ball for this to work. Well, no. Where's it terminating? The angle measurement is with respect to a flat plane that's been blacked out, so you can't see it. In other words, unless you know how this works, you won't describe the surface level that is required for this angle measurement to a star. You've got to have a flat plane in the first instance, or you won't get the angle. Now, we would, if you're talking to a baller, point out that you're never going to be in hell measuring this angle. But it's required for you to suggest that you're in hell measuring it off the equatorial/extended celestial plane. That's how it functions. So you've got to have a flat Earth for it to work. Why? Well, because the angle that you're measuring is an angle view with a glorified protractor wrapped around your position. It's got a flat base and angle measurements. Well, that's all the ball is. See these lines? They're just representing the angle measurement from the initial system that's derived from Polaris off a flat plane. That's how it gets measured. Now for them, oh no, it must work on a ball because we don't see the flat plane in this diagram. We just see two balls. Therefore, two balls, got to be a ball, got to work on a ball. No, it doesn't. This is a glorified protractor, but it has a base for a horizontal reference, or it won't function. You won't get the angle. That's how it works. Flat. There's no exceptions to it. It's how it's been derived in the first instance. But like I say, without a year of 10th man going through every single flat Earth prerequisite elevation angle measurement used to create the ball, I wouldn't be able to so succinctly describe how when they say, well, you need a ball for this to work, latitude, longitude. No, as Brian would point out, when they're actually functionally utilising latitude and longitude, it's two-dimensional. But the original inference comes from measuring elevation angles from a flat plane, from your position with a protractor wrapped around you. Now, you can then convert that into a sphere that's wrapped around you, with you in hell, as depicted on screen here, and then suggest that that's how it functions. Meanwhile, you need an equatorial plane to measure to get the angle. That's Earth as a flat plane being measured. You're not inside any ball. You're just on a flat plane measuring angles, always and without exception.
Yeah, so Coriolis cynic, stop using our stuff. You need to answer for the flat Earth. Stop jumping into your rhetoric.
They're in pain. They're going to use things like elevation angles and arc seconds without acknowledging the flat plane that is a prerequisite for them to use those things. Like I say, that's going to cause pain. And it's only when we point out that you're whistling past the angles that are required from a flat plane to suggest that we need to explain how an arc second works. No, you don't need to be using our stuff, is my reply. Don't use a flat plane to suggest that we're not on a flat plane. It's very irritating.
Yeah, and then I've been hearing all we talk about is measurements. Yeah, what the heck else you want to talk about?
Well, it's because they want to whistle past the measurements. It's awkward for them. Without the measurements, they can go to the presuppositions that come afterwards. We take them straight back to the original measurements and say, well, you're measuring Earth flat to achieve this in the first instance. They don't like that. They've got so used to whistling past them. Only idiots that don't realise it, like Dan, Simon Dan that is. He wants to use flat Earth prerequisite elevation angle measurements thousands of times because he was too dumb to realise what we've been saying the entire time. You first need a flat Earth to measure to get your elevation angle from it. Well, Dan just went out and told his audience, measure Earth flat with an elevation angle to the sun, and then we'll do what Al-Biruni did and convert it into sphericity after measuring Earth flat. Now, if you're dumb, or you don't listen to Flat Earth debate, you won't appreciate how flat you must first measure Earth, and then justify that it's only on a short distance. Yeah, we can measure Earth flat because it's a really big ball that we're measuring Earth flat with, to then convert into the sphericity that gives you a 1.22 times the square root of the observer's height in feet distance to geometric horizon, an 8 inches per mile squared curve that we're not measuring for an elevation angle. But that's because it's a really big ball that we're measuring Earth flat. No, you're just measuring Earth flat. But like I say, if you don't realise that most of the trick for a baller is to whistle past the initial flat Earth measurement, you'll go out and ask your audience to measure it flat 1,000 times without realising it. Because in Dan's mind, he was measuring a ball with his flat Earth prerequisite elevation angles, wasn't he? It was only when I come along and go, you've just measured flat Earth 1,000 times, Dan. Well done for measuring Earth flat, exactly as we've been pointing out for the last 5 years. That's how it's measured, for everyone, always. What was the response from Dan? Yeah, we can measure it flat. It's okay. No, you're just measuring Earth flat. It's not okay. Don't use our stuff.
Well, the same thing with Brian, with McToon. He was waving measurements in Brian's face.
Yeah, of course. When he's on the phone to me from Antarctica, actually acquiring the flat Earth prerequisite elevation angle measurements from surface level, again, an angle, two straight lines meeting at a vertex, from the surface, it's an elevation angle, that means from the surface, that's flat. He'll wave those flat Earth prerequisite elevation angle measurements in Brian's face, saying, look, it matched the ball. Like, what, your flat Earth prerequisite elevation angle measurements from surface level matched the ball? No, you're whistling past how they get converted from the flat Earth prerequisite you've measured into sphericity after the fact. But your calculations don't trump the measurements. If the calculations don't match the measurements, then it's the calculations that are wrong, not the measurements. Meanwhile, they measured Earth flat in Antarctica for 24 hours, apart from Fugly Dave, who couldn't quite cope with his own tripod. But other than Fugly Dave, they measured Earth flat with elevation angles for a full 24 hours. That's just a flat Earth measurement. They don't have to like it. They can wave it in our face all they like, saying, oh no, this is a globe measurement. No, it's not. Not measuring anything curvy with angles. You're measuring the flat surface level for it to be called an elevation angle. That's what they measured. They don't have to like it. Like I say, idiots that want to whistle past how flat they measure Earth and only focus on the conversion are just going to have us every single time pointing out, well, you measured Earth flat with this angle. It's an elevation angle. What's that? It's not from the surface. It's got nothing to do with the surface, so you haven't got any measurements then. Oh, you have? You've got flat Earth prerequisite elevation angle measurements from surface level, two straight lines meeting at a vertex. Can't be curved or it won't be an angle. Well, then you're measuring Earth flat. And they are, indeed, measuring Earth flat. That's how Earth got measured. But the whole game, which is rigged, is to make that very simple fact of Earth measurement into a group of people talking about 9/11 truth, whether or not Charlie Kirk died. All this kind of crap is what we are painted as nutters with. When in reality, everybody who's measuring Earth is measuring Earth flat. There are no exceptions to this. But if you can take it away from being about Earth being measured flat and make it into whether or not Charlie Kirk gets killed on screen, or whether or not 9/11 was an inside job, or there's no planes, or whether or not Sandy Hook, blah, 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 blah. All of these stupid notions that people talk about from our own side, not limited to those things, also expanded out into even more crazy notions like the entire world was subject to a mud flood. There's a Mandela effect changing our reality. Everybody's a clone, and there's clone centres. These kind of stupid idiot notions that flat earthers go through on a daily basis are the things utilised to make us look like idiots. Then it's not about Earth being measured flat anymore, is it? It's about how stupid and idiotic flat earthers sound when they talk about current news events. Now that's much more useful, because then you can brace against how stupid the people are. Then it's not about Earth measurement anymore, it's about the nutters who talk about conspiracies. And that's what they've done. They've turned flat Earth into a group. Earth and its flatness is dictated by the measurements. Same as the ball. Like Dan's just found out, or Fugly Dave and the crew in Antarctica have found out. If you're going to measure Earth, you'll measure it flat. Now, that's not me measuring it with elevation angles in Antarctica for a 24-hour period, other than Fugly Dave, who couldn't quite cope with a tripod. That's you, requiring Earth be measured flat. Everybody requires Earth be measured flat because it's measured flat. But if you can turn that into a group of nutters, then you can ridicule the group. Never mention how Earth gets measured flat. You can talk about how this group says there's an ice wall, while you talk about how there's 2 points in the sky, north, that's horizontal, and south, that's horizontal, only. And how that proves a ball? No, it doesn't. Proves how you're measuring elevation angles in two different areas, both described horizontally on a plane. And those elevation angle measurements require a flat Earth be measured to call them measurements. That's simple stuff that's always going to be the case when it comes to measuring Earth. There aren't any exceptions. Surveying Earth is the same, rise over run over vast distances. Massive areas of flat land that we survey, flat, with rise over run. And trig, that requires flat baselines. Be measured. Horizontal distances in order to utilise trig. Be measured on the flat surface of Earth. Same with the sea level. People put it in their titles but don't use it as arguments. They give themselves the screen name sea level and don't talk about it. Meanwhile, just the fact that we have sea level, utilisable in all respects of Earth measurements, is a flat Earth prerequisite. People whistle past it all day long. Why? Well, because the flat earthers say that there's a dome. They said 9/11 was an inside job. That's why. We, with the highest level of suppression that you can possibly have on YouTube, only talk about how everyone in all aspects and at all scales measure Earth flat. That's how it's measured. It's on screen now. This is the trick. The flat Earth measurement is the elevation angle measurement from, in this instance, the equatorial plane. That's the measurement. Now, if you can suggest that there's a tangent plane, a flat surface that you can measure on a ball, with a dangling dingleberry Earth beneath it that you can later convert to the centre of hell for it to actually function originally as intended, with the claim to be ball Earth actually a glorified protractor, then you can utilise north and south and east and west flat inside a glorified protractor that you think is a ball, because you've measured a tangent plane that you haven't got on the surface and converted it inside the ball, making the ball, the globe, a glorified protractor. All those little markings around your ball, those are the protractor markings that you'll make elevation angle measurements work functionally with the stars we navigate with. That's how Earth gets measured. There's no ifs, buts or maybes. I'm not saying anything controversial. This is how it works. Functionally, Earth can only be flat. North, south, east and west can only be described as flat. They're horizontal planar directionalities. Now they want to tell you north and south have got different rotation points, really. Okay, so north over here's got a rotation point and south over here's got a rotation point, has it? How fascinating. I'll explain how that makes a ball. Oh, well, I suggest that south is actually antipodal from north. No, it isn't. That derivation comes from measuring a minimum elevation angle to Polaris to derive an outside edge of a radius, circular in nature, called the equatorial plane, that you can stand within, making the Earth a glorified protractor at 3959 miles. Radius. Well, does that mean we're on a ball? No, not measuring on a ball. You can't make it work on a ball. In order to suggest that it's on a ball, you have to go back to the diagram I showed earlier. With a tangent plane, what, a flat surface that you're actually measuring angles from that don't work because you haven't got a protractor around you anymore. You'll have to transpose it inside hell to it to have any functionality or usefulness. Yeah, but we're not in hell, and we're not measuring on a dangling dingleberry that's useless to the measurements of angles. But we are measuring angles off a flat surface. You can call it a tangent plane, but it doesn't alter what we're actually measuring with respect to Earth's surface. A flat plane.
Yeah, I get all of that. You can lay all of that down, and then this is what you'll get. You're expecting me to go against all of science?
How is this a scientific subject? We've just talked about maths for the last 10 minutes.
It's not, but hats off to them, because they, whoever they are, they got the world thinking that pseudoscience is science, and that's it. Remember when we first got into this flat Earth debate? It was the whole body of science knows it's a globe or proves it's a globe. So now people just getting into it, when you present it to them, they think that you're going against all of science. And you got to take them through how it's got nothing to do with science. This is a geometric problem here, and it's not even a problem. It's just flat. But that's how they set their game up.
Yeah, like I say, the game has been rigged very carefully against us so that we become idiots talking about conspiracies rather than about flat Earth measurements. And back in the day when we were talking about conspiratorial nature of flat Earth, we got views. These days, the only people in flat Earth that get views are the people that are easily mocked because they talk about conspiracies. We are suffering egregious censorship.
No, I think the school systems need to be challenged. I think parents need to go to the schools and say, listen, I want to know why my children are being taught pseudoscience. but they have to know what the scientific method is. Even go there and address the Board of Education, because I'm sure they would run there in a second if their kids came home and were saying 2 + 2 is now 5 or 8. They'd be there in a heartbeat.
But Jason27 says from the chat, I thought they saw a 24-hour sun in Antarctica. Well, maybe. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of deception and a lot of the people down there were charlatans. So that may or may not be the case. But regardless of whether or not they did, what they presented was flat Earth measurements from wherever they may or may not have been. So let's say one side of the argument says that they're inattentive televisions. Now, I'm not saying that is the case, but plenty of people out there would suggest that's the case. Okay, so they measured Earth flat with a sun that's on a television screen. Okay, well, they still measured Earth flat. They needed elevation angle measurements to the sun for a 24-hour period, and they all measured Earth flat with elevation angles for a 24-hour period. I keep having to do this, don't I? Except for Fugly Dave, couldn't quite cope with a tripod. Other than Fugly Dave, who couldn't quite cope with his own equipment, because he's very stupid, the rest of them, if inattentive tellies, measured Earth flat with surface level angles to the sun for a 24-hour period. Let's take it as read that they were in Antarctica. In the south, that's horizontal. So they went on a plane and flew perpendicular to a plane of reference, nose up with respect to the horizon, for a prolonged period, logged in the black box as flight level when travelling south. And then they landed on the Antarctic continent and measured Earth flat for a 24-hour period. Apart from Fugly Dave, who couldn't quite go with the tripod. But they're measuring Earth flat. Who cares if they're in a tent of tellies or if they saw a 24-hour sun? They still measured Earth flat there in the south. Now, if you take that as an antipodal presupposition that south is down, it isn't. Go and buy a compass. Look at what south is. Doesn't change what they measured. Doesn't matter if you don't describe where they went. I won't say the word south. They went to Antarctica and saw the sun for a 24-hour period. Yeah, they measured it flat, didn't they? With elevation angles. That's elevation, that's off the surface. Angle, 2 straight lines meeting at a vertex. So they measured Earth flat in Antarctica, regardless if it was a complete lie and they were in a CGI rendered environment or if they were actually there. They still measured Earth flat in both circumstances. It makes no difference. So we measure Earth flat. There are no exceptions.
I want to know what severe issues we go, because no, they fall back to axioms. They can never move on, even in the face of severe issues. What severe issues do we have, Nathan?
A real bad pain in my side.
Besides that, I think the issues are on the ball side. Yous have the issues. We're just measuring Earth flat.
So are they.
That's fact.
We all are. They measure Earth flat too. It's not my measurements I'm detailing when I say they measured Earth flat in Antarctica. Other than Fugly Dave, who couldn't cope with the tripod. They measured Earth flat in Antarctica for a 24-hour period with the sun being a television rendering or a CGI rendering. Who cares? I don't care. Still measuring Earth flat with it. So there we go. Like I say, the whole game is rigged in favour of us being nutters rather than talking about measurements. And shockingly, you're going to need agents on both sides of the argument, the perceived argument that you've created, to say, oh no, why do you want to talk about measurements? And you're like, aren't you a flat earther? Yeah, I don't like you talking about measurements though. Well, it seems weird that you'd be on my side suggesting that Earth's flat, telling me I need to talk about Sandy Hook, but saying you don't like talking about Earth measurements? That seems weird. All right. I mean, it's almost like people have learned over many years how to control an opposition. You lead it. And then you can create the narratives that you want your opponent to argue about because you're leading your opponent. So there's plenty of people out there that are perceived leaders of this flat Earth that would shout us down as scammers, like Jaron did. A perceived leader of this flat Earth community, leading you, gullible, conspiratard flat Earth sheep, into believing in things like ether. and thinking that arguing for a flat Earth means arguing about whether or not there's men in space, a second law of thermodynamics violation we destroy with one sentence when we appeal to natural law. That would be gas would fill the space. Therefore, no need to argue about whether or not they're faking and CGI rendering men in space. There is no outer space. It's a violation of natural law. But Jaron spent 10 years leading the opposition because he's now a baller. His true colours have come out since going to Antarctica and measuring Earth flat. But in the meantime, the people who actually talk about how Earth gets measured were shouted down, that's me, by the perceived leader of the flat Earth, that's Jaron, as a scammer. So Jaron told a huge number of people that I'm a scammer. Why? Well, because I was talking about science and the scientific method like Neil brought up earlier. We're told that the whole body of science proves we're on a ball, right? So when I point out how now that's not the case, science is a method, not a just so story utilisation by ballers. But when I point that out, I'm told, or the audience moreover is told, that I'm the scammer. No, Jaron was a controlled opposition leader. That's all he was doing for 10 years. Then he came out of his little shell, and now he's saying it's a ball because Earth gets measured flat like a Home Depot. That makes no sense. But if you want the narrative to be about ether and space rather than flat Earth measurement, you can lead a whole bunch of conspiratard sheep down the road of a flat Earth being not about measurements, but about outer space. That's what you can do. Now we've already had all the people poisoned against us by this opposition leader. He is our opposition. He never was a flat earther. QE had been saying it for years. Me, I still wanted to appeal to him because he was a perceived leader of our group. Influential. Influencing you into talking about domes and outer space, rather than the flat earth measurements that we cover here, while we were being poisoned by Jaron as being scammers, which we're not. I'm not scamming you when we tell you Simon Dan measures Earth flat with elevation angles. Am I scamming you? No. About when I point out that fugly Dave McKeegan couldn't quote with his own tripod when attempting to measure Earth flat for a 24-hour period. Is that me scamming you? No. It's me detailing the facts. But this so-called leader of the flat Earth, who punted sky vacuums non-stop, never mentioned the second law of thermodynamics violation, and also talked about all sorts of conspiracies. Yeah? People would point out, oh, he had some great information. Yeah, just never mentioned how flat Earth got measured, did he? Did call the people who were saying it's scammers, though, didn't he? That's Jaron. Yeah? So now they've come out of the woodwork. There'll be more so-called leaders telling you that the people who actually detail the nitty-gritty of how Earth gets measured, that's flat, us, are scammers. They'll say we're the bad people. You need to learn how 9/11 was an inside job. Or Charlie Kirk's still alive on some tropical island. Whatever garbage they want to punt to make you, when you repeat it, sound like a nutter. And the people who give you the decent information, that's us, paint them as scammers. And that'll happen indefinitely, because the only way to control an opposition is to lead it. And that's what's happening. So look at your so-called leaders and ask yourself, what are they talking about? Are they talking about how everyone in all circumstances has to measure Earth flat? Or are they talking about 9/11 being an inside job? They're talking about Sandy Hook. They're talking about ether and electromagnetic forces and free energy. That's what they're actually talking about when they say they're flat earthers, aren't they? Anything but how Earth gets measured. And the people who do get called scammers. That's us.
That pretty much sums it up. Very good. That's exactly what's gone on for the past 10 years. And it culminated us to being the scammers when we're just telling you Earth is measured flat. Isn't that something?
Yeah. Pointing out that when people say science proves we're on a ball, they haven't adhered to the scientific method. Detailing how the scientific method works, we got shouted down and told that we were literally scammers for talking about science and the scientific method.
Yeah, and if you don't understand, like I remember a few years back, I thought that the Earth itself was a natural phenomenon. How couldn't it be? I mean, we're talking about Earth. But then when I was educated, I understood. It's very simple.
So yeah, science is a method. The method is as follows. Step 1. Observe natural phenomenon. That'd be something occurring in nature that you want to know the cause of. Step 1. Observe phenomena. Step 2. Formulate a suppositional cause for what you observed at step 1. Your suppositional cause, otherwise known as an independent variable, sits in a hypothesis, otherwise known as scientific prediction, as an if and then statement. If my suppositional causal influencer, independent variable, then dependent variable, naturally occurring phenomena. If I vary what I presume will cause the effect, I will cause the effect. If and then. Alongside that, known as an alternative hypothesis, scientific prediction, is something known as the zero difference result, or null hypothesis, which says the antithesis of your prediction. If my suppositional causal influencer, that's independent variable, is varied, I will not cause the dependent variable, naturally occurring phenomena, to occur. In other words, you've got two possible outcomes in a scientific prediction. Only one can be proven true, and both of them are a true possibility statement. If A, then B, tick, possible provable outcome, or if A, not B, tick, possible provable outcome, but not both. You can't cause an effect and not cause an effect at the same time. Therefore, the method incorporates an empirical outcome in the method. Only one outcome can be and will be proven true when you get to step 3, actualization of your scientific prediction, otherwise known as experiment. An experiment is where you vary, in reality, your independent variable. Your independent variable must be real. That's to say, not an imaginary thing that you've made up. It must be actually real. It must be capable of variation and manipulation by you, the researcher, and it must be the independent variable that was listed in step 2. That's to say, what you put as your if statement is the thing you'll actually vary. So it must comport with those 3 things. It must be real, it must be the independent variable in the hypothesis, and it must be capable of variation and manipulation by you, the researcher. If you vary it and it does cause the effect you observed at step 1, then you have validated, by way of scientific inquiry and actualization of hypothesis, the independent variable as the cause of the effect. Tick. You have validated your scientific prediction in the alternative. Your alternative hypothesis has been proven to be true. On the other hand, you vary and manipulate your presumed cause of the effect, and it does not cause the effect. Tick. You have validated the null hypothesis. That is to say, one or other of the predictions has been verified. This is why the scientific method, otherwise known as physics, is an empirical method. Now, that's useful to hijack with just so stories if you want to tell the world that everything that science proves we're on a ball. Well, no. Science is a useful method for establishing the cause of naturally occurring phenomena. A ball isn't a natural phenomena. It's a concrete noun based on a presupposition after measuring Earth flat. But that's maths, not science.
Well said. Now, anyone can comprehend that.
Alternatively, after dissecting and explaining this on many occasions, I've been called a scammer for talking about exactly what I just went through in great detail with you, the audience. Jeranism, now a baller, having exposed his true colours as a shill leading the opposition away from flat earth measurements and into conspiracy and free energy and ether, he claimed I was a scammer for detailing how science, that's physics, the study of the physical and natural world, utilises a method called science, the scientific method. There's only one. It's an empirical method of establishing cause when studying the natural world and the phenomena therein. I got called a scammer for that. Why? So that you, the audience not watching, because you've all been turned against me by the controlled opposition leaders like Jaren, were told that I was a scammer for detailing that. There you go. That's life. That's what you need to do if you're going to try and convince people that flat Earth isn't about Earth being measured flat. Science is about stories of the ball. Because they've gone and claimed that they've done science, haven't they? Jaren was one of them. He's saying he's doing science in Antarctica. No, he's not. But me saying what science really is wasn't conducive with their alleged science that they went and measured the ball with. In Antarctica, they didn't. They measured Earth flat.
So is there a certain title to say that you're a scientist, or does it not have a title?
Say that again.
Does it come with a title? Like, is a professor a scientist, or is that just a different title?
Just a different title. Professor's a qualification that you would acquire. Scientist is anybody who varies and manipulates that which they assume causes a phenomena they've observed in nature after formulating a hypothesis. That's a scientist.
So you shouldn't bow to a qualification.
You don't need a qualification to vary and manipulate that which you assume causes an effect you've observed in nature. You just need to formulate a hypothesis with a presumed cause and vary it in an experiment. That's it. That makes you a scientist. No qualifications are required.
That's what I wanted to know.
So you so eloquently laid down the scientific method, and I got an idiot in chat saying, or Jaren's experiments.
Jaren's never done an experiment.
Exactly. You paying attention, Cordial Cynic? Why don't you join the show one day? Stop chat skanking.
Just explain what an experiment is. The actualization of a hypothesis, otherwise known as scientific prediction, which has an independent variable, that's your presumed cause, and a dependent variable, that's the effect you observe in nature. Now, Jaren's never done that. He's not varied and manipulate that which he assumes causing an effect he's observed. That has never been done by Jaren, and never will be.
Well, they claim the 24-hour Antarctica thing was a final experiment.
Yeah, I
Maybe
realise.
he's referring to that?
So what was the independent and dependent variable in that so-called experiment? Oh, there wasn't one. There was an affirming the consequent formal logical fallacy that suggested that if they saw a 24-hour sun in Antarctica, it would disprove an azimuthal equidistant North Pole-centric globe projection projected from a sphere created with flat Earth measurements. That was their so-called experiment. That's not an observation of a natural phenomena based on their seeing an observation of a natural phenomena. If they're going to allege that, they didn't see it till they got down there, and what did they do when they saw it? If they saw it at all? Well, they measured Earth flat with it, with elevation angles. That's not an experiment. A flat Earth measurement. But yeah, we're in a realm where it's easy to lead an opposition. You just need to put your own agents in place and have them talk about whatever it is you need your opponent to talk about to brace against. Now, if you can get your opponent to only talk about whether or not we've got men in space, there is an underlying prerequisite space for them to be in or not be in when you argue about them. That's what Jaren did. Jaren introduced the idea that we can argue about an area that doesn't exist. So he's essentially been put in place to say, well, I say there is no lion that can talk in Narnia. And then you, my opponent, says, yeah, there is definitely a lion in Narnia that can talk. What do we say? There is no Narnia. Narnia being out of space, in case you didn't follow.
Then comes the question, but why? Why would they? What does it profit anybody?
Why would they lie?
That's all. Yeah, why would
Don't
they
care.
lie? That's what I got hit with last night.
I don't care. Well, the lie comes from her own side in this instance, from Jaren's lips. Nathan's a scammer because he talks about science and the scientific method consistently. No, I'm not. Well, that's not talking about Earth measurements, though, is it? The whole swindle is making Earth measurements into a group that you can ridicule. And you want the group to talk about things that are very much conducive with there being an outer space sky vacuum and ignoring how Earth is actually measured flat by everyone, always and without exception. Keep them well away from that.
Sorry, that's the dumbest question I've ever heard. Why would they lie? Neil, have you ever lied?
No, I'm going to take out a position. I don't lie.
just play along. Yes, he has. Craig.
Of course.
So what was the purpose of the lie?
To deceive somebody.
Correct. So it's a stupid question to ask somebody why somebody else would lie. It's a simple answer, to deceive somebody.
Yeah, then they go, but why would they want to deceive? Well, you figure that one out for yourself. What I'm telling you here cannot be disputed. I've laid it out for you how Earth is measured flat. 3 ways. So if you want to go down that rabbit hole of why would they lie and what was the point of it or what are they trying to hide? Well, I mean, I have my points of view. I think it leads right back to the father of lies, Lucifer, who wants to be as God is. He said he would exalt himself above the stars of heaven. He said, I will be like the Most High. And the whole world believes we're in a heliocentric system. Well, in my opinion, that's the one. That's the culprit.
It matters not, again, as much as I don't want to decry your question, the person that's asking why would they lie, it's, again, part of that controlled opposition narrative to question the reasoning behind the reality that you're faced with once you're faced with it. Now, why would they lie? That's an appeal to motivation fallacy in reality. Now, I'm not trying to condemn you, the person asking, but it is a fallacy to ask that question. It doesn't matter why they lied when they talk about outer space, the sky vacuum, and little men in it, and Earth being a ball based on flat Earth prerequisite elevation angle measurements. The reason and motivation behind that is irrelevant. What is relevant is, what is Earth, if we're going to suggest this is a debate? It's not. Everybody's measuring Earth flat. So then all that matters is, what's the conclusion if you're going to suggest there's a question to be asked about the nature of our reality? And with an inference from your perspective, presumably, that it's sphericity as a prerequisite in the first instance. Well, it's not. Based on the measurements, Earth's flat. Why would they lie? I don't care. It's irrelevant. Know that it's flat. Once you know that it's flat, the question of motivation becomes unimportant. You know it's flat. Duffy took the gang to flat Antarctica. Hope you're feeling better, and thanks for all you do, says Zozo. Thank you for the super chat. Really appreciate the support. Any more for any more? We're going to round out. I need to come up with a title for today's show. We call it Controlled Opposition FE or something like that.
Why would they lie?
Why would they lie? That's a good title.
You want me to read the scripture that I got?
I mean, you can.
How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which did weaken the nations? For you have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven. Oh, ascend, that's up. I will exalt my throne above. There's another one. The stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. That's north, that's direction. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. So there you have it. The father of lies, laying it out for you. Now Brian was talking about it the other day, how they make the sun that God created and the magnificence of what we can see, and they try to put it somewhere way, way far out that nobody could see to make this look like it's nothing, when this is the real glory. If we just look at creation or what God has created, no, the sun is a star, and there's many more of them out in the far distant galaxies. So, to me, that's the Lucifer trick.
There's an antidote to that. I'm going to do a quick shout out because I've been really enjoying Michael Kahn's really short videos that he does each day. I've been watching these, Neil.
No, I haven't.
So Michael Kahn's been doing a series, A Psalm a Day Keeps the Devil Away. And he's on number 60. He's done 60 of them. He just reads a psalm every day. It takes him a minute or so. And it's just really nice. It's really easy to digest. So Shout out to you, Michael Kahn. I really appreciate what you've been doing. I'm sure you've seen me leaving little thumbs up comments and such. But yeah, I like the fact that you're just doing it in a nice, simple 1-minute package. Because I'm pretty time limited, generally speaking. So to have that offered up as, I see it as a service. So thank you very much for your service, Michael Kahn. I'm going to put a little link to your video in my live stream chat. And people can hopefully subscribe to you and enjoy a summer day to keep the devil away. Really appreciate what you're doing.
How long you say it took him?
Each one's only about a minute long, but he's done 60 so far.
Let me know when you get to Psalm 119. See how long that minute's going to be.
Another 59 days or so, Neil.
I used to do that too. What I did was I would read 5 Psalms a day and a proverb, because there's 31 proverbs. But I would read Psalm, if it started, today was the first of the month. I would read Psalm 1, Psalm 31, Psalm 61, Psalm 91, and Psalm 111. And I would read that all the way through the month. And you wouldn't believe how a lot of them connect. Very strange, but that's how I did it when I was, in a prison cell. I had, just the Bible. That's what I would do. So yeah, a psalm a day is great.
If you are watching, if you're amongst the 61 people watching now, pop along to Michael Kahn's video that's been linked. Divergent Droid still beat me to it, even with me having him in my history ready to go, knowing that I'd plug him. He still managed to beat me to him with a link. So shout out to you, Divergent Droid. Also, shout out to Divergent Droid, who's started to become a bit more vocal on his own channel. So if you actually click on The Flip Side with Divergent Droid and go to channel, you can subscribe to him. He called out some ordinary gamers in the last couple of days. So I like that Divergent Droid's become a little bit more vocal. But he basically left he's been doing this for quite a while, but he left a long comment for some ordinary gamers because he'd been criticising Flat Earth in some capacity. So he overcame some of his objections in a long-form comment. But then you think, well, that's a lot of work to produce that comment. So what he's done off the back of that is actually produce it as a video and just read the comment out. So you can see, here's my comment to some ordinary gamers. Here's the context. And he just reads it on a video. You're like, yeah, that's good. I like that. It draws attention to a comment where it might just get removed by the YouTube videographer. So shout out to Divergent Droid also. Be sure to subscribe to him. If you can spam a link to your own video, Flipside, that'd be really appreciated as well. So yeah, there's a couple of videographers in our live stream chat that I would like my limited audience of 62 people to actually go along and subscribe to. It's Divergent Droid and Michael Kahn.
62 people. We got to do something about that.
Please share the show if you've not done so already. Smash that share button. Share. Stick it on Bebo on MySpace or Facebook or X, whatever it is you're using as a social media platform. And just let the world know. Nathan Oakley 1980 is live right now.
I bet if you start talking about Ether, you'd get thousands.
I've had this last week. Somebody said, well, why not just talk about some of the subjects that get you more popularity in the flat earth arena? So I could talk about mud floods or 9/11 truth or Sandy Hook or Charlie Kirk. And yeah, I'd get a lot more views, but I'd be sacrificing my own integrity, wouldn't I?
Absolutely. And if we do talk about it, it's in the negatives.
Yeah, absolutely. That said, there are certain inklings that people are looking into these subjects and going, oh, there's something not quite right here. And that might make them scratch their head. But that's about it. When it comes to the subject that we actually cover, there are far stronger evidentiary standards that we can lay down for our audience in terms of Earth and its measurements and them being flat. And that's what I'd rather lean into always. Yes, you've got to undo certain narratives, and that's what the book will do. So it's not like you've got 16 chapters of us talking about Earth being measured flat in the book. It's going through the progression from conspiratorial subjects and how Earth gets dealt with in debate and what we fondly call the feast of nonsense offered up by our alleged leaders to deal with as though it's the subject matter, and it isn't. But we undo a lot of those subjects. A lot of the claim to be proofs of a ball that are alleged are undone in my book. When it comes out, everybody will be grateful for it. You can pass it on to a friend, and then the undoing of gravity you can get from the book in the gravity chapter. You know, the alleged spin of the Earth is undone in the Coriolis chapter. But at every stage, each and every subject matter is brought back to the focus of the flat Earth. So the working title of the book was, and isn't anymore, All Roads Lead to a Flat Earth. So if you're talking about Coriolis effect, for example, as that was the last subject I'd mentioned a moment ago, you need a plane of reference to describe Coriolis effect. The deflection is a non-inertial plane and an inertial plane of reference. They're flat. So in order to describe an alleged spherical claim to be effect the Earth experiences, that's Coriolis, you'll need flat planes to describe it. Now, we don't experience Coriolis effect. I might as well give you the concise undoing of this alleged to be drift at 15 degrees an hour, where Earth turns underneath a non-inertial, as a non-inertial turning reference frame. That claim would mean that a flight from Charlotte, North Carolina to Los Angeles would only take an hour and a half as Earth turned underneath it. Like it's alleged to turn underneath gyroscopes and pendulums by Foucault. Now, that is not the case. It violates the base principle of gyros, but that is the claim, that Earth is turning underneath as a second reference frame. What's that I can hear? Can you hear that? You and your reference frames are ruined. Oh, thanks, Dan. Meanwhile, you need a flat plane to describe inertial and non-inertial planes of reference. Spinning. Good.
So you're saying Coriolis is not real?
Coriolis is real. So if you stand on a roundabout spinning around and there's two people either side of you tossing a ball back and forth, then you on the roundabout, let's go on camera to do this. If you're on the roundabout, so you're spinning around and around and you're looking as the roundabout spins, but either side of the roundabout there's two people that aren't on the roundabout throwing a ball over the top of you. Well, as you watch that ball move in a straight line, you will perceive it to curve because you are turning underneath it. Now, that perceived curved path is the Coriolis force, the force that makes it curve. Now, it's a pseudo force because the ball isn't curving. It appears to curve because you turn underneath the ball. That is Coriolis effect. You, on a non-inertial turning reference frame, observing the motion of something travelling in an actual straight path, appear to curve. And the appearing to curve bit is Coriolis deflection caused by the pseudo Coriolis force. Because there isn't one. No force is applied to the ball. It's only travelling straight. It's only perceived to curve because you're turning underneath it. Well, that is alleged to be an effect that the ball Earth, when assumed after measuring it flat, is claimed to have. That is to say, you are alleged to be turning underneath things with a 15 degree an hour alleged drift being apparent. So you look at the stars and they're turning. They go, oh, they're not really turning. You claimed to be turning underneath. So the stars aren't really moving. It's an alleged drift at 15 degrees an hour. That's Coriolis force. Well, if that was the case, then Earth is turning underneath as a non-inertial turning reference frame. Now, when we point out that Earth isn't turning underneath, you get a smart ass like Dan turn around and say, well, you and your reference frames, they're not my reference frames if we're claiming Earth's turning underneath, but nevertheless, the claim by Dan is that my reference frames have been ruined when he shows things not drifting. You're like, okay, so you haven't got 15 degrees an hour drift then. Kind of caught between the rock and a hard place there, Dan. Dan's very good at disproving his own rhetoric by utilisation of me explaining his rhetoric on his behalf, and then him telling me that my rhetoric's been debunked when he overcomes a globe Earth rhetoric like Earth turning underneath at 15 degrees an hour. Not according to Simon Dan. According to Simon Dan, my reference frames have been ruined? No. You, on a claim to be turning Earth, don't have two reference frames and Coriolis deflection. We'd notice. flights from Charlotte, North Carolina to Los Angeles would only take about an hour and a half instead of the 4.5 hours they actually take if Earth was turning underneath. People would look up the plane and go, oh, look, check it out, it looks like it's curving. It's not really curving, it's just us turning underneath to cause this Coriolis deflection, and not actual deflection. That's to say the plane isn't really curving, it just looks like it's curving because we're turning underneath it, shortening its flight time. That doesn't happen. I point this out and Dan tells me my reference frames are ruined. Idiot.
So you're saying there's just no Earth-based Coriolis?
Correct. The roundabout example is Coriolis deflection. You can experience Coriolis effect. Sit on a roundabout and ask someone to throw a ball over the top of you. And you'll look at it and go, wow, it looks like it's curving. Yeah, that's because you're turning underneath it, though. It's not really curving, it's travelling straight. The effect of it seeming to curve is Coriolis effect. So if we've got a seeming to curve stars because Earth's turning underneath, then Earth's turning underneath and we'd notice. It would shorten flight times.
Could be the ether drift.
Yeah, there you go. That's where your controlled opposition narrative comes in, doesn't it? You can have people like Bob Nodell saying, oh, no, the alleged rotation of Earth at 15 degrees an hour is actually a star rotation at 15 degrees an hour. Okay, so we're not overcoming the Coriolis deflection argument and pointing out that you need to measure a plane of reference to make this claim work. No, we're now introducing a second part of a false dichotomy in the form of an ether drift. Well, that would be useful if you're a controlled opposition shill that never mentions how flat Earth gets measured and only introduces a new bullshit narrative about ether drift. Sounds like a controlled opposition narrative to me, because it is. We can point out how Earth isn't turning underneath, and then our opponents will agree with me. Like, Dan, you and your reference frames are ruined. But is that what the flatties were doing at the time? No. They were introducing ether drift. Shills, all of them. The same people who called me a scammer. Why? Well, because I'm pointing out Earth would be required to be described as a flat plane to describe this effect, and we'd notice if Earth turned underneath hot air balloons, planes, drones, you if you jump up and down, stars, gyros, compasses, pendulums, everything. If it's claimed to have this effect, then it must be a non-inertial turning reference frame. Turning underneath. That's how the effect works, like the roundabout, turning underneath the ball. But if you can turn that into, we've got an ether drift, then you've got two sides of a coin being controlled, rather than pointing out how Earth must be flat. Looks like Neil's disappeared. Anybody got anything to mention from Discord? If not, I'm going to round out this live stream. No? With that, I will say, if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, though, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So, another massive thank you to all of you who liked, commented, shared, subscribed, joined as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, hit me up on PayPal and Patreon and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.